Hey, welcome back everybody to another Q&A with Dr. J. Dunn, the founder of My Happy Genes, direct-to-consumer genetic testing company, which is different from all the rest. And if you go to myhappygenes.com, you can now see why. We just created a beautiful comparison chart, exactly how we're different so that you can make an educated decision about what kind of testing company you want to work with. Dr. J, today we're going to talk about something that is very near and dear to you, is addictions and whether there is a genetic component to addictions. And I'm going to ask another question. Can we blame the addiction on the genes?
That's a good question. It's back to the old saying that the genes load the gun and the environment pulls the trigger. So it's never just one or the other. You can have low risk in your genetics, but be exposed to drinking or drugs or whatever and can create an addiction. But if you have certain genetic variants, they could potentially increase your risk of certain addictions. And it's really interesting because there are different parts of the brain where different dopamine receptors reside that actually make you more susceptible to one type of addiction than another. And this is fascinating. The dopamine receptors, the DRDs, basically, if you start to look them up, there's a DRD1, which we don't know that much about. The DRD2, highly susceptible to alcohol, mainly alcohol, but also other kinds of drugs. The DRD3s, you're more likely to be addicted to work and being an entrepreneur, kind of workaholism. The DRD4s are much more associated with drug addiction. And the DRD4s are interesting because they often make the person kind of irresponsible, basically. And the whole key behind all of this is the brain is looking for dopamine. And if you're missing a receptor or if you have genetic variants in those receptors, you're always going to be looking for the next hit of dopamine. And again, depending on which genetic variants you inherited will determine what you're more likely to be addicted to. Interesting. But again, the environment is going to play into this as well.
Yeah, and I'm thinking of food addictions, the environment in which we live for people with a tendency to a food addiction are up against it because 24/7 we can get anything we want and it's loaded with sugar and salt and things that make us want it more.
Yeah, absolutely. And sugar is as addictive as cocaine or methamphetamines, actually. It's a very powerfully addictive substance. But there are two components here, and one is the dopamine hit, and the other one is sugar cravings because you are low in energy. Your cells are craving food and your brain is screaming for energy. And then, of course, not to dismiss the emotional component of it as well, when people eat for kind of emotional support, basically.
So smoking, eating, drinking, drugs, sex addiction, all of those could have their roots in a gene, but they also are influenced by our environment.
Yeah, and it's the really interesting thing here, GC, is that when we work with their underlying genetic variants, we can get their brain making dopamine more efficiently, and it starts to turn off our addiction or our cravings. And it's very cool to see because I've seen it happen with methamphetamines, I've seen it happen with cocaine, I've seen it happen with sugar. I've seen it happen with all the addictive substances that when you get the brain making dopamine in a more efficient way, it satisfies those receptors and our brains shut off. It's funny because people will come back in and go, yeah, it doesn't even sound good to me anymore. And to me, that was fascinating because I didn't know that was going to happen when we first started working with the genetics, but I kept seeing it over. I'm like, wow, this is pretty dang cool. Especially if, that person is in, let's say, a rehab, they're going through getting off the drugs or alcohol or whatever they're trying to quit. If we could get them at the same time to balance their underlying brain chemistry, the rate of success would be through the roof. And so that's, again, something I'm really passionate about, as you brought up, because I think so many people suffer. They're just being a slave to their addictions. Yeah. And can't seem to stop. And these are good people. And we look at them as a society and we go, just stop it. It's a problem, just stop it. And it's just never that easy. The cravings sometimes are so freaking powerful that we're beyond our willpower in a lot of cases. Very small percentage of people who can do it with willpower.
Yeah. And it's interesting if we could get people when they're first going into recovery, or if they've made that decision on their own without a program or anything else, be able to give them the support they need, then the compassion piece comes in. Let's look at these people and say they just need help rather than they're lazy or they just don't want to do it. They just want the drugs more than they want a good life. That's generally not true of anybody.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, thank you for bringing up that word, compassion, because it does mean a lot. And if we can step back and stop judging and realize that they have a disease, as they talk about in alcoholism or drug addictions, that there's much more going on than just lack of willpower and not caring about their family or their friends or their lives themselves. When the first person that I did this with, it was just stunning to me. It was a young girl who had two young children at home, and she was hooked on methamphetamines. We look at it and we go, she decided that the drug was more important than her kids. And it just simply was not true. She was very much addicted, and it's a very powerful drug. It can make you leave behind your small children, deny our mothering instinct and go toward the drug. But when her family brought her in and said, can you do anything with this? And I said, I don't know. It was in the beginning of when we were working with the genes. And I put her on a program based on her genetics. And within a week, she said, I don't even want it anymore. And if you've ever been around addicts, you know that's okay. Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, of course.
They have this honeymoon period where they're off the drug and they're feeling great. And a year went by where she got her life back. She got a house and she got a job and she got the kids and she was doing great. And she stopped taking her supplements that are designed to balance the brain. And she went right back to meth. The calling and the craving was so strong. And that's the thing, is our brains are set up for the minute you try, if you have a certain brain configuration from your genetics, our brains are set up to immediately be addicted to those things that kind of fill the receptors correctly. Anyway, her family called me up and said, make sure that she gets her supplements because we'll pay, and make sure that she stays on them. And I still follow her. She's doing really well, and she's been off of the drugs for a very long time. So,
nice.
and then we saw it with cocaine. We've seen it with alcohol. We've seen it with sugar. And it's all about understanding how the brain works and working with your genetics and getting it balanced so that it doesn't even sound good. That's the best thing to hear out of a patient's mouth. Is, lost my craving. Just gone.
That would be great for even the people that don't have this knowledge, don't have their genes tested, and are going to meetings every day and still have that struggle. I'm not criticizing meetings. Good, they're there for people. All I'm saying is, having read a bunch of biographies and memoir about people that have these addictions and getting clean and how hard it was. And then maybe it becomes easier for some people, but in the beginning, my God, all they do is think about what they're not going to do that day. So it would be great if we could give their brains the relief. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a big deal. And I'd love to have a clinical trial on this so that we could say, here's proof of concept. I know clinically I've seen it work over and over, but I don't have data. And so I would like to do a clinical trial where we could show it. Here's the data, and it's definitely a work that works and really supports these people who are struggling to get off their addictive substances. So that's in the future.
Anybody listening who has access to people who fund clinical trials or are involved in getting them funded or getting them started, that would be great. Contact us, drj@myhappygenes.com. Okay, peeps, we'll be back next week with another episode of Q&A with Dr. J. Be well till then. Thanks, Jay.
Thanks, GC.